Hello, the internet, and welcome to episode 5 of
the 80-bit Podsmash, featuring your hosts, Penguin and Termite,
where gaming goes to grab a beer.
We're getting better at that. I think you guys should appreciate it.
What ship do you have for us today?
Oh, yeah. Today, this episode is a galley.
Ooh, what's a galley?
I think they're the ships that, they house the soldiers. So it'd be it's a war vessel for sure. So
right.
We're setting sail. The Armada's setting sail. It's fully loaded with all the troops, and we're gonna launch this thing.
That sounds
after
awesome.
This.
It's how nerdy I am. It reminds me of Donkey Kong Country 2 song for the first level, and I love that. The soundtrack to that game is amazing. So thank you for bringing that memory back to me.
No problem. That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, nerdy things.
So what's new?
I don't know, man. There was a game I was talking about in one of our previous episodes called Hellblade. That came out today.
Oh,
dropped,
yeah.
And it's made by Ninja Theory, who also made Heavenly Sword as the launch PS3 game.
Successor.
They also made Enslaved, which caught my interest like crazy when it came out for PS3 and Xbox 360 years ago. I never got it because I had too many things going on in my life. But so that drops today, and they don't have an actual publisher. So it's just Ninja Theory, straight up.
Sweet.
They just did it themselves, so it's actually considered a AAA indie game.
Nice.
It is 2017.
Okay.
We now have AAA indie games. I would have never thought in my life. It's a psychological experience game, but also action hack and slash.
Okay.
So it's supposed to take the player through what it means to have a mental illness.
It intrigued me.
I'm dying to play it, but right now I'm swamped with other games, and
that list gets ever longer. Yeah.
I've got so much stuff going on that it's on the back burner, but it's only $30, so
okay.
I'm all about it.
All right, so
what do you got planned for some downloadable content tonight?
In honor of by the time this episode of the podcast release, it should be close to holiday season.
Yep.
And we suspect that Nintendo will have announced the N64 Classic.
Oh yeah, let me talk about this. So,
go for it.
Apparently, Eurogamer dropped. I think it's Eurogamer. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. However, it was leaked that there was a patent for the recreation of an N64 controller.
Right, I remember that.
That was identical to the original one.
Mm-hmm.
And given that the NES Classic has the exact replica controller and the Super Nintendo did, they all went through the same process, and they were equally predicted. So we have a pretty good feeling that there's going to be an N64 Classic.
Right, so in honor of that dropping, and due to the fact that the 64-bit era of video gaming is my forte, I guess.
We are 80-bit Podsmash.
It's my origin story, yeah.
Because you are 64 and I'm
64 out of 80, yeah. So I figured we would do a lot of other video game journalists are doing this, but it's kind of a dream list of what games from the N64 generation that we would want to see on the NES Classic. So there's something like 20 games on the SNES Classic. So
it's funny because there was 30 on the NES, and they decreased it to 20.
I'm wondering if it has to do with hardware.
Yeah, people are speculating that it's the same hardware, so it's taking up the same memory space. They just kind of decreased the amount of games. Yeah. I have no idea. You guys on the internet probably know way more with all of your sleuthing and all of your nerddom digging in, which is amazing. And you should tell us exactly how much memory is in these things and what the hardware is, because I want to know.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe the game would be decreased given that this is now bigger games.
For the sake of brevity, even if it ends up being more, for the sake of brevity, let's put it to a top 10. We can think of 10 games that we think should be represented on the N64 Classic, hypothetical N64 Classic.
Sure. The hardest part, I think, is I'm going to start.
Go for it.
I'm going to go for it first.
Yep.
The easiest title is Mario 64.
Of course, yes.
That's got to happen.
Yeah, that's on the list. And why don't we just go ahead and throw Ocarina of Time up there?
Yep, you gotta have Zelda and Majora's Mask, because all of the NES, SNES, they had the major Zelda titles there.
Now, what I would love to see, real quick, as a caveat for that,
I
would love to see them do the remastered version that they did for the GameCube, and even possibly include Master Quest on there.
Ooh, that'd be
a sweet option for Ocarina of Time, at least.
They did Star Fox 2.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, so if they did Master Quest for Ocarina of Time, and then even if it would be cool, if they did a new Master Quest for Majora's Mask. It'd be pretty sweet. So those are some dreams.
Well, wasn't Master Quest had been developed in Japan only, that they kind of ported for North American release?
Something like that. I just remember, and I hate myself for this, that I think it was offered as a freebie
Yep.
For Nintendo Power?
It was either there was 2 discs, and I have both of them on my shelf. Wow. One of them was for being a member of Nintendo Power, and you could mail in the little card with the information to get one. And the other one was for pre-ordering Wind Waker.
Right, okay.
From GameStop.
Yeah, so neither of them I got, even though I saw the one, and I regretted it later. I saw the one from Nintendo Power, and I actually liked Nintendo Power. I had a subscription. For whatever reason, I just didn't decide to renew it with that one, where they give you the Master Quest or whatever.
Yep.
And I hated... Like, my friend had it, so one of my roommates had it, so for the entire duration of the time I was in college, I had access to it, and that's how I would play. Whenever I had an itching to replay through Ocarina of Time, that's how I would do it, is I would play just a regular version, but I would play it on the GameCube, because I preferred that controller.
Yep.
And nowadays, I'm married and living with my wife now instead, and as of what I have access to in my house, I just have access to the N64 version. So I've got it, and I can play it. I haven't yet, so in the past, 3 years since I've been married, I haven't actually touched it. Yeah. So that's got to change. But maybe I'll borrow your Master Quest, who knows?
Yeah, I'm willing to lend you.
So getting those 2 out of the way.
So we have 3 games, Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. Okay. And what I was saying earlier, that it would be hard to do, let's not just list all of the Rareware titles, because they were all pretty awesome, but they're all collectathons. So Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong, Jet Force Gemini. We probably have to narrow that down a little bit. But then there's GoldenEye Perfect Dark. Is there room on our top 10 for both? Those are all made by Rare. That's why I mentioned them. So I'll leave it.
So we're leaving Donkey Kong off?
I'm just saying we should limit the collectathon games down to 1 or 2 that define it.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm going to say Conker's Bad Fur Day, but some people might fight me on that because I think that defined everything. That was the best collectathon platformer, hilarious, mature audiences. It just hit me at the right time.
I agree. I never played it because it was for mature audiences, and I was at an age where I wasn't allowed to.
That's what it costs to be an SNES boy. I was older for N64.
Yep. I would say. I'm trying to think because what was Pokemon Stadium? Maybe Pokemon Stadium for the.
There was 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Okay, yeah, that might be up there because I was gonna say of the Pokemon games, that one because that was at the height of Pokemon Mania.
Oh yeah.
And but the real first Pokemon game that came out for the N64 was Pokemon Snap.
Yep.
And I loved it.
That game was awesome.
But it was an awful game.
It was so short and so shallow.
It was like a rail shooter of but not a shooter, taking pictures. You weren't catching the Pokemon. You were just taking pictures of them. And it was so disappointing.
I got it for my birthday in my teens, and I played it through one night. I remember finishing it, and I was like, this is it?
Yeah.
I'm used to it taking a couple of nights.
Right.
But then I got the player's guide, which has how to get the best picture and the most points, so I spent weeks after that just trying to get the best thing and uncover all the secrets. So it had a little depth to it. But overall, that's a 10-hour game.
Gauntlet Legends.
Gauntlet
Legends has got to be on there. Yeah, like that. The mania around that game with at least me and my friends was crazy. Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Yeah.
All right, so we're at 5 now. All right.
Okay. Of the Rare titles, we can say Conkers. Is that?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, sure. That's fine because I know how genre defining that was.
Yeah.
For the console, especially being a mature game. Yep. Even though I didn't get to play it. Oh man,
it walks you through movie parodies. They did Saving Private Ryan, The Matrix, Godfather, Dracula. It just all of that. It just hit all of the pop culture notes from that time and before. Yeah. And I just think it's so perfect because Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie and Donkey Kong 64 are all amazing platformers, and I would play them all, but they have so much collecting. Yeah. So you spend so much time back in each world, making sure you collect everything. Yeah. Where Conker's Bad Fur Day is a little bit more linear and less collectathon, but it still captured the elements of platforming, and then threw in some third-person shooter stuff in there with the Matrix and Saving Private Ryan stuff.
Right.
And so anyway, that's why I pick. I would say Conker's Bad Fur Day because it's just so dynamic. It's awesome.
All right, I'm thinking we should add a Star Wars game to the list. And I'm torn between Rogue Squadron and Pod Racer.
Racer. Well, we don't have a racing game yet.
Yeah, and Pod Racer was one of the only racing games that I actually legitimately enjoyed the heck out. Because it was it was actually the first N64 game I owned. I was at the age when the prequels didn't seem that bad. The prequels were targeted to someone like me, a middle school kid. I wish I could say that when I first saw the prequels, I was like, that's stupid. Episode 1 is garbage. Legitimately, my favorite character was probably Jar Jar Binks. I'm embarrassed to say now, as an adult.
You are dead to the world.
But
the internet will shun you forever.
Probably, yeah. I just nailed that coffin. Put the nail on that coffin. But I did enjoy, it's part of the reason why I like the Jar Jar Binks fan theory, because it kind of
that's
justifies my
guys, look it up. That's a whole podcast topic.
That's a whole podcast topic on its own, but that's...
Apparently... Jar Jar Binks is a Darth Jedi.
Yeah, he was the dark Sith behind everything in the prequels. But that kind of justifies my enjoyment of the prequels as a kid.
I'm gonna argue Rogue Squadron captured the Star Wars universe.
I think so. I think it really did, like, especially the fact I got to have the experience of what it would be like to pilot an X-Wing versus a Y-Wing.
Yep.
And that, like... Again, I remember hating the Y-Wing because it was slow and it was just a bomber. And I loved the X-Wing, and there was another one that I just loved the heck out of. I think it was the A-Wing.
The A-Wing's my favorite. Yeah. And because of Rogue Squadron, that's why it's my favorite.
And did Rogue Squadron let you play as one of the Naboo starfighters,
it did. It was a secret hidden thing. Yeah, use a code to unlock it.
Yeah, I loved Rogue.
I think it had the Millennium Falcon, too.
Oh, yeah. I think it's... Or maybe was that another one?
It might have been a sequel for GameCube, but I'm not sure.
I loved Rogue Squadron a lot.
Yeah,
so, okay, we'll keep Rogue Squadron on there. And then a recent game, Mario Kart.
Mario Kart 64, you think so?
Mario Kart 64, yeah. Yeah, if it's not on there, people will probably riot.
Right.
So
it has to be. Unfortunately, it's the worst Mario Kart. Second worst.
I disagreed with that, but you can listen to that whole discussion in episode 2.
I don't remember when
3?
we talked about that.
Something like that. One of those other episodes, you can listen to that. But it's going to be on there because people love Mario Kart. So we've got
Mario
7?
64.
Yeah, Mario 64.
Zelda.
2 Zelda games. Conkers. Rogue Squadron. Mario Kart.
That's 6.
Smash Bros.
Smash Bros is 7.
7. I'm going to say...
Star Fox 64.
Star Fox 64, yeah.
That's 8.
For sure. And,
either GoldenEye or Perfect Dark.
Oh, it's going to be GoldenEye.
You think so?
Perfect Dark I found to be more of a, like, cult favorite as opposed to, like, mainstream people like GoldenEye better. Even though I would agree with you, Perfect Dark's a better game.
Yeah, it's like the definitive version of GoldenEye. 100% it took everything cool about GoldenEye and evolved it.
Yes, 100% I enjoyed Perfect Dark better, but mainstream people would enjoy
I did enjoy the GoldenEye story. The first player, or single player, right. The single player stuff with Perfect Dark has never grabbed me. And I've tried to play it 1,000 times. They re-released it on Xbox, and I could just not get it. I couldn't get it. I don't know.
Yeah, I
no hooks.
I think the GoldenEye would be on there. So that's our 9. What's 10? One more game. I'm thinking of like a fighter. Like, was there Mortal Kombat? I played Killer Instinct.
There was Mortal Kombat 4, and
but those
Killer
are from other games though. I wouldn't include them because they're on.
There was a couple of bad ones. I think there was like War Gods and. Oh, what was the other one? Dark Rift?
Yeah, I really guess
there's some bad fighters.
Yeah, I guess that Smash Bros would be the definitive
Smash Bros would be your
fighter there.
Yeah.
One more.
I can't believe it's hard for us to come up with 10. Well, I guess because I threw away all the rare titles and limited it to just GoldenEye.
Was Castlevania 64?
That was a game.
It was a game. I was going to say, was it popular? I don't know. I remember my friends played it, and I wasn't blown away by it.
And because Castlevania is on all the other classic systems, maybe.
Yeah.
There was a Kirby game. There was a Yoshi game.
Oh, Kirby.
Yeah.
Yoshi's Island.
Yoshi's Story.
Or Yoshi's Story, was that it?
One,
Yoshi's Story?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do it just for the sake of completion and moving on.
Yoshi's Island 2, or Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island is on the SNES Classic.
Sure, so I would imagine they'd carry on the Yoshi. Yeah. I would say Yoshi or Kirby. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, cool. That's our DLC for the day.
All
right.
Do
you want to go over our 10 one more time just for...
for completion's sake?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah, cool. All right. DLC!
DLC is done.
Pew, 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 pew.
Now we'll move you into our topic of the day of this episode.
Yeah, what are we
very,
talking about,
very
Danny?
eager to talk about the collaboration between... I wouldn't even say collaboration. It's more or less correlation. That's the word I'm looking for. One of those big C words.
Yes.
Correlation of personality types in video games.
Mm-hmm.
We want to ask the questions: why do we choose to play specific games? What particular factors make a particular genre or even a particular game more appealing to us than others? What do we think people's video game preferences say about their personality? And what are the most popular games and why are they so polarizing?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the questions we're going to answer tonight.
Sweet. Yeah, so
how did this topic come about?
Yeah, exactly. So it got me thinking about this topic, and it got me really excited to talk about this topic. It was a few months ago. I was playing Diablo 3, okay? Like you were saying, about polarizing games. Very polarizing. We got people on one end that are like, Diablo 2 is the greatest that franchise will ever be, and you should only, if you're going to waste your time on a new game, you should waste your time on Path of Exile. Don't touch Diablo 3. There are other people who are like, Diablo 3 certainly improved upon what Diablo 2 did and brought it into a modern gaming context. I'm in the latter camp. I really enjoyed Diablo 3. Don't get me wrong, Diablo 2 is classic, but I did enjoy the heck out of Diablo 3. So I was playing Diablo 3 one day, and some rando, it wasn't someone completely random, it's someone who I've played online in World of Warcraft before, but really it's more of a friend kind of deal. And his name was, I want to say Antabarok or something like that. That's what his gaming name is. His real name is Shane.
Wow, call him out. Live on radio.
Shane, call out. But he's a great guy, good person to play with. But again, more of an acquaintance, someone that I've played with because he knows someone else I play with. But this guy named Shane, he whispers to me while I'm playing Diablo, and he goes, "Hey man, is Diablo 3 good again?" And I was like, good again? Like, what do you define as good? And because that was my reaction to it, because I was like, I don't know, I enjoy it. You know, it was my reaction. I was like, I think it's good. And he goes, well, is it still a grind fest? I said, yeah, it's still a grind fest. Of course it's still a grind fest. This is Diablo 3 we're talking about. This is Diablo we're talking about. This is a Blizzard game. Of course it's a grind fest. And, you know, that was more or less the exchange, but it really got me thinking, like, why do I? You know, it made me ask the question, why do I like Diablo 3? And I kind of realized, well, I like Diablo 3 because I like the fact that there's such variety in gameplay. There's this, you know, you're kind of going after a build, and it's grindy. Yeah, so in one regard, it is grindy, because all you're really doing is casting the same 3 spells and killing lots of demons.
Once you get your build.
Grinding loot. But the fact that you're, you know, getting that build, like achieving that build that you're going for, and seeing along the way how the pieces of gear change your character over time. I don't think any game that's out there on the market now goes to such great lengths to change the way that your spells and abilities work, just based on what individual pieces of armor you have. The closest is maybe Borderlands. Yeah. Borderlands 2 and Borderlands pre-sequel. Yeah. They might be the closest, but even they don't quite, you know, when I first found out that they were releasing a set for Demon Hunters in Diablo 3 that made it so that your turrets fired a copy of the same primary spell you were shooting, I was like, that's amazing. It was so cool. So every time you fired Cluster Arrow, like the 6 turrets you have would go whoomp. Like, that just changed gameplay for me, and the idea of what was possible with gear. And that's why I like it. So it's always, every season, they, you know, a new build. I almost always try a new character with a new build, and just kind of see how the gameplay evolves as I play it. And so it's that variety of gameplay that really appeals to me. But I can honestly agree with Shane that, yeah, the actual, like, what you're doing is kind of grindy. It's kind of boring. It's kind of repetitive.
Yeah, it's samey.
Very samey. It's not like World of Warcraft where you're going on all... You know, you're going to whole different parts of the world, or if you don't feel like doing a raid that day, you can go PvP. You know, there's all kinds of options and availability to you. It's not like that. So I can see how it wouldn't appeal to a certain type of player, but that's all based on, or it has to be based to some regard on personality. Yeah. And what your personality says about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we going to use for our rubric here for personality types? Like describing what a personality type would be.
Yeah, so the science behind personality is not great. There's not really many options. The most popular personality indicator that's out there right now is Myers-Briggs. Admittedly, I don't love Myers-Briggs because it wasn't really developed by scientists. It was kind of developed by social scientists. At a time when social science was kind of in its infancy and wasn't really as scientific. But it really has caught on, and the internet loves Myers-Briggs.
It's everywhere.
Hop onto BuzzFeed, and there will be like 18, type in Myers-Briggs, and there'll be like 1,800 articles about what Aladdin character your Myers-Briggs you are. Yep. But you know, I do find it's a good baseline. My in-laws, my sister-in-law, is obsessed with the Myers-Briggs. Like, they talk about it all the time. And frankly, like, it's not bad. I mean, it's a good... Obviously, you're going to defy... You're going to find people who kind of break the norm and defy the category that they're put into. But it really works well to kind of, as a baseline, like, how to interact with people based on their personality type. Mm-hmm. It's a good kind of baseline for figuring that out, I've found, even though I buck up against it in some regards. So that's it. We're going to talk a little bit about Myers-Briggs, because I think I found an article that was pretty fascinating and did a really good job of trying to back up their assertions with data based on surveys that they performed. Yep. And it was a website called 16personalities.com. The article was titled Might or Magic, a Study of Gamer Personality Types, and it's from 16personalities.com. If you don't know what this whole Myers-Briggs thing is, if you're completely new to it, I'll give you a real quick baseline explanation. You're basically, what they assert is that your personality is comprised of 4 different elements, and you're either, you're a binary category within those 4 elements. So, for example, you're either introverted or extroverted, and that will form the first letter of your personality. The first letter being, so for me, example, I'm extroverted, so it's E. Contrary to popular belief, extroversion and introversion has nothing to do with how social you are. It's simply about where you get your energy. When you are, how comfortable you are in groups. If interacting with people tires you out, you're an introvert. If you are, while you're interacting with someone, you're like, oh man, I'm tired, I need a cup of coffee, that means you're probably introverted. If when you're engaging with a group of people, you're pumped up, you're an extrovert. You get your energy from engaging with people.
Get hyped.
You get hyped. That's me. I'm totally an extrovert. I was a theater major. I'm pretty sure that's because I would just leech energy out of the audience.
Absolutely.
And that's where I get pumped. So yeah, you can be perfectly, my wife, for example, is a perfectly social introvert, and I'm a very socially awkward extrovert, so we're kind of opposites in that regard. So it has nothing to do with how reclusive or socially awkward you are. A lot of introverts use the excuse of like, oh, I don't have to be around people because I'm an introvert. No, you still should be around people, just realize that it's going to tire you out.
And then do it less, or,
or adjust your behavior.
It really does change what your mentality is when you think about it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do I get my energy from? By being at home reading a book. So I'm going to hang out at home a little more and hang out with people a little less.
Or just find your introvert time to recharge. But once you're charged up, don't use that as an excuse to be a recluse. Go engage with people and let them drain your energy. Trust us. You'll us extroverts will appreciate you for it. So yeah, that's the first letter. So you're either an E or an I. The second letter is about how you take in information. So you're either a sensor or you're an intuiter. Intuiter. It's for you either have an intuition or you have you sense information. So the intuition, because there's already an I, they use the letter N to distinguish it. So if you're an N, you intuit things, meaning you kind of read between the lines. If someone says something, you're using your intuition to determine what they're really meaning behind what they say. A sensor, on the other hand, just takes it at face value. So if you're a sensor, if I say to you, hey, Termite, I really want pizza for dinner.
I'm ordering pizza.
You're ordering pizza, whereas if you were to say to me, hey, Penguin, I really want pizza, I'd be like, but does he really want Chinese food? Like, I'm trying to, his body language, he wasn't super excited when he said pizza, so maybe he wants Chinese food.
Maybe he's just trying to be a people pleaser.
Maybe I should.
He's only ordering pizza because he thinks I want
maybe I should offer Chinese food. Yeah,
but exactly. I should offer something else.
Yeah, that's what intuition tends to be. Keep in mind, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't agree with any of this, it is on a spectrum. So, like, for example, I'm like 80% extroverted, but, someone else might be like 5% extroverted. Like, it's a spectrum preference, so you might only have a slight preference for sensing over intuition. You might be right there on the middle, so you might do both, is essentially what I'm saying. You might actually take in information both ways. It's just what you have a slight preference for. And I'll get into it with the next one. The next one is then how you process that information to make decisions. And that is, you're either a feeler or you're a thinker. Again, this is not like how emotional you are. This isn't about how intellectual you are. It's literally just about how you make decisions. So do you make decisions by rationally thinking through them and thinking about what is the best course of action based on all of the information that I have, versus a feeler who is like, you know what, I'm making decisions based on how I feel in any given moment. Again, like I said, it's a spectrum. I'm only 5% feeling over thinking.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm very much on the borderline of those two. I could switch over to being another personality type any day now, because it's also constantly changing. So and my wife, I kept asking her, I was like, why do I consistently test as an F over a T? Why do I consistently test in feeling? Because I consider myself a fairly intellectual person. And the reason why is, she said, she called me out. She's like, when I ask you to do the dishes and you make the decision to not do the dishes, why do you make that decision? And I say, because I don't feel like it. So that is the F and the T. And that is why I reluctantly accept my role as an F. And then the final category is then once you've gotten your energy, taken in information, use that information to make a decision, how do you then organize your world around that information? And in that way, you're either a perceiver or you're a judger. So again, this is not about how good you are at perceiving. It's not about how judgmental of a person you are. It is simply how you organize your world. A perceiver is more likely to be disorganized, just kind of like take things as they come, usually tend to be procrastinators and do things at the last minute, and judgers tend to be very organized, very clean cut, because to a judger, it's either good or it's bad. This organization is excellent, everything's in perfect order, or no, it's chaos. And they don't do well in chaos, whereas a perceiver lives in chaos. So for those who are curious, I am an ENFP, so I'm extroverted, I'm intuitive, a slight feeler over a thinker, and I'm very much a P. I'm very much a disorganized, just kind of like slapdash, which goes to great lengths to show how we even put together this episode. Is I'm like, hey, I've got 30 minutes left, I'll review the material that we've got. Whereas Danny's got like 4 pages of notes. So.
In advance.
Termite's got 4 pages of notes. So go ahead and you want to explain?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an ESFJ. Mm-hmm. So I'm an extroverted, sensing, feeling judger. Mm-hmm. I'm very much, I love people. I get energy from talking to everyone. I guess that's why we started a podcast together. Sensing... as far as getting information, I take things at face value, which is why if someone tells me they want pizza, I'm going to get them pizza. If someone tells me they want this for their birthday, that's what they're going to get.
He's also really easy to troll for this exact reason, because he's not the best at picking up on sarcasm.
No, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. and then I make decisions based on how I feel. So, and that goes beyond like chores, like things like, what do you want to do? We have it one special, like my wife will ask me, we have this one night, what do you want to do? The world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. And I'm like, well, and I'll change it 8 times throughout the week, because each day I feel like doing something different.
I can see that.
As I take in information, I feel like doing different things. So I'll listen to podcasts about specific video games or genres of games, and I'll immediately drop the game I'm playing and be like, I want to play this.
I want to play this, yeah.
Because I feel like playing that today because I sensed the podcast on the way home. And then I'm a J, which is funny because the J kind of acts against both of those, where I would need to be organized. And we'll get into gaming personalities and what this means, but I love trophies and achievements. The fact that they came out with those things back at PS3 and Xbox 360 times just like flipped my gaming world upside down. Mm-hmm. I'm all about the overall metagame accomplishment thing, and it just plays right into my J. Like, I gotta have everything scheduled, I gotta have everything planned, I gotta have outlines, notes, Excel spreadsheets, calendars. Like,
yeah, he turns down playing games with me sometimes because I'm like, hey, do you want to play Borderlands? Because I know that he has Borderlands on PC. And he says, no, I'd prefer to play it on the PlayStation where I can get my trophies.
I want my trophies.
Or I'm like, I just want to play the game with people who enjoy it. Gosh.
But yet I play Diablo 3 with you for hours.
You do.
Where I accomplish nothing for nights because it's fun.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so that's so if you are curious, if this has piqued your interest and you said, I want to know what personality type I am, if you don't already, I do recommend taking the quiz. There's quizzes all over the internet.
There's a ton of free ones.
I recommend taking a variety of them because that will give you, on some you might test as something different on others, and that way you can kind of average, I tend to average test as this, and that gives you a good idea. The one that I think is the best, though, in regards to, in my experience, the one I found that gives you a really good result is the one from 16personalities.com. So we're giving you guys a free plug here, 16personalities.com, just saying. And the reason I like it is most of the quizzes out there are like a binary yes-no. They'll ask you a question and you have yes or no as an option. The 16 personalities quiz gives you like a spectrum. It says you can answer as like strongly agree, strongly disagree,
like 0 to 5.
Agree. Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of rate things. And then if you rate it kind of, they say try not to rate the middle one like neutral, completely neutral, but they at least give you the option if you need to. If you literally come to a question you're like, I do both, then yeah, you can just hit that as neutral.
Yeah.
Because that's what I hate about the binary yes no is like I'll come across questions and I'll be like, it depends on the circumstance. I might do both. I might be both possibilities. So having the ability to kind of give a slight preference or a strong preference is what I like. So I like that website. So we'll link off to it in the footnotes, but in the meantime, that's it. And that was actually the one that gave us the article that we're kind of using to base this.
At least as a launching point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the article divides all gamers. They analyzed 2,500 gamers at a college. It was Toronto, I believe.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not. Cite me if I'm wrong, please. I'm not trying to be, truthful. I'm trying to be truthful, but please let me know if I'm wrong because I don't want to give out false information. So, yeah, I think it's Toronto. 2,500 gamers take this test, and they ask you a bunch of different questions about the types of games you play, multiplayer, single player.
I imagine they probably
also, open world, closed world, role-playing games versus not.
I imagine they probably tested their personality types first.
Yeah, exactly, right. So then they divided all of the gamers into 4 categories based on certain letters. So we just went over Myers-Briggs, so we have 4 letters.
The important thing is if you want to go into more detail, you can take the tests, figure out what you are, and then read the article and see what it says about your gaming habits. But yeah.
It's surprisingly enlightening. Mm-hmm. It described me as a gamer to a T.
Oh, yeah, it was
this article, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
So there's 4 different super categories that you can be.
Yeah.
And they're based on 2 of the letters of the 4.
Yeah, it's based on the 2 middle letters. So again, if you're getting confused and lost, just read the article, take the test. It'll all become more clear.
Sorry for you guys driving to work right now. You don't have time to look at your phone and what is this Myers-Briggs thing?
Yeah, you can't pause and then take the test and then
No. I hope that is interesting enough that you'll stick with us and maybe you'll be fascinated to go take your own Myers-Briggs test and then follow that up with a 16 personalities analysis of who you are.
Yeah.
So here we go. We got 4 super classes of the different types of gamers. The NT in the middle. Again, we're talking about the 2 middle.
Mm-hmm. So if you're intuitive and thinking.
Intuitive thinkers are the analysts. Mm-hmm. The intuitive feelers are the diplomats. The sensing feelers are sentinels. and the sensing thinkers are explorers.
Yeah, so don't get too bogged down in what the categories are named, because you might think explorers would be like, oh, these explorers love open world RPGs then, because we just said it. And actually, it's the opposite. Explorers tend to love like competitive games, like first-person shooters. So I don't know why they gave those necessarily names, but they're helpful for a discussion so that we can have categories to talk about. But just don't get too bogged down in the names that they give it. So, each of those 4 categories will have 4 subcategories, which will be the specific personality types. We're talking in broad strokes because if we were going to talk about 16 different personalities and what they like, then
you guys would be asleep.
You'd be asleep, and we'd probably be plagiarizing. So we're not going to do that. We're going to talk broad strokes about what this article asserts these categories like, and then we'll get more into discussion there. But so yeah, the broad strokes are this: the analysts, which are the NTs, intuitive thinkers. They tend to be the kind of gamers who article cites them as being the people who probably invented video games.
Yeah.
They like the minutia. They like the tinkering. They're probably more likely to mod a game. They like open world RPGs because it gives them a variety of like mechanics to explore and different. They're based on what I was describing earlier, you might think that I would fall in this category about liking different builds. I don't fall in this category, but still, they're probably the ones who sit there and play. They probably level all 5 classes in Diablo in a given season, and then tinker with all the different builds to figure out what. They'd be the ones who would probably come up with the builds. Is what I'm saying. I look on DiabloFans.com and find the build that I want to do this season. They're the ones who actually come up with the build because they're doing number crunching, all the mathematics. That's what the analysts tend to do.
Not ironically, it goes to show that the NT is also the number 1 personality type of computer programmers, software engineers.
Yeah, exactly. So those are if that sounds like you, that's then you might be an analyst. Diplomats. This is the category. This is my home. This is the category that I am. Diplomats tend to be looking for an experience. They're looking for some kind of meaningful experience within a game. We're looking to kind of, like I said, earlier episodes I talk about how I love if a game tells a good story. That's totally the home of the realm of the NFs. We love a good story. Ironically, we're the most likely category to kind of jump between games. We're the ones who are likely to get bored of an experience and move on to the next one because we're just like, okay, this experience has lost its magic for me. Let me go ahead and find a new experience to have some magic. Yeah, so that's the diplomats. The sentinels.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah, you go for it, man.
This is my home. This is where I reside. So we're the most likely to see gaming as a waste of time, which is hilarious because
you do a gaming podcast.
We're gamers, and that's what we do. But this feeds into like multiple aspects of my life and how I frame how I spend my time playing games. We are more likely to choose quicker, more casual types of games. We view gaming as a lack of productivity and therefore fear judgment of others for time spent in this habit. Yep. So that's pretty funny too.
Because especially the extroverted ones.
Yeah, I will downplay my game time. I played a little bit of Splatoon over the weekend when I really played 4 hours during the Splatfest when my wife was away. Right? I know, it's dumb. So first place for Sentinels are first place for console gaming over other personality types. So we're the ones that step up, and PCs are a waste of time. They drivers and debugging and configurations, compatibility, ain't got time for any of that crap. We prefer clear-cut missions and goals, which is totally true. Sentinels also are least likely to watch online game tournaments and streamers, least likely to be a pro gamer.
Well, and I found fascinating, they're also the most likely to play cell phone app games.
Which I hate.
Smartphone games, which is
minus Mario Run.
Yeah. But
Mario
considering
awesome.
The popularity of not only SFs actually make up a very large portion of the personality base. So these personalities are not equal. There's some people are more of one than the other. And Sentinels tend to be the ones who actually make up a large portion of the population. And considering the fact that a large portion of the population primarily plays games on their smartphones, and this one of the weaknesses of this particular study is they only surveyed people who identified as gamers. There's so many people who don't identify as gamers, but will play a game on their smartphone. Yep. A large portion of them are probably this personality type, Sentinels. Yeah. It's cool. And then the final category, as I said, was explorers. These are people who are going to have the sensing, thinking personality type. And these are your first-person shooter. These are your competitive multiplayer people, especially the extroverted ones. They love the ability to kind of like make snap last-minute decisions. They love fast-paced games that require them to adapt and change to their environment. That's why competitive multiplayer is really what they love. It's because they're forced to when you're going head-to-head in a reaction time contest with another person, another thinking human being. The ability to make snap
So like StarCraft actions per minute?
Yeah, yeah, they love RTSs, they love first-person shooters, they love racing games because it forces them to adapt. What I found really interesting about this personality type is that they like stealth games. But the way they approach stealth games is completely different. So analysts, too, the first personality type, the ones who are the super thinkers, detailed, they might approach a stealth mission by, like, watching the guard patrol patterns and figuring out when the best time for them to go into find an opening would be. Whereas the explorer might be already halfway across across the stealth mission by the time the analyst starts. They might have even failed a couple of times because they're going in making like last minute reactionary decisions. The temporary risks of any given moment in a video game don't outweigh the reward of getting that perfect, way of doing things. I bet you that speedrunners, especially introverted explorers, are probably more likely to be speedrunners because of the reaction time, the ability to make last split-second decisions that make or break.
And then the competitiveness of it, too.
Yep, exactly. So that's the explorers. So we found that article fascinating because of them going into that. But we want to talk a little bit about what we think. So what are the observations that we've made?
We come from analyzing MMORPGs, at least myself specifically, and talking to friends about the roles of an MMORPG. So to get a party, it's a team-based game. You go out and it's more structured than kind of your action adventures, hack and slash single player games. You have someone who's in the role of like a tank, and that person's role is to mitigate damage. They're going to run in first, head first. They're going to have the most health, the most armor, and they're going to absorb and take all of the damage from all of the enemies in the situation. That's the tank's role. Then you have the DPS, damage per second role. The attackers go in, and they're the ones that have the term is squishy. They have low armor and not so much HP, but they do damage, tons and tons of damage. They have a high critical hit chance, which is like a critical hit is when your damage is multiplied by a certain number, randomly. Usually it's buffed by gear and abilities. And then you have your healers or your support group, and your support healer people, they're the ones that are going to keep the party alive by giving them buffs when it comes to like defense, but also healing HP directly. And so each of those different roles within MMOs are directly linked to personality types.
Yeah, I mean, they're often referred to as the Holy Trinity. A lot of MMOs kind of buff up against this. So Guild Wars 2 is a great example of an MMO that actually actively tried to subvert the Holy Trinity of MMO roles. For better or for worse. In some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. But it's a game that it's an MMO that doesn't really have your traditional tank and healer roles. Instead, everybody kind of does a little bit of everything. But that said, I think the Holy Trinity works in this discussion because you see those kind of three categories are then reflected across a variety of gameplay. In MMOs, you can do solo play, but you still have to have aspects of all three roles. You have to be able to heal yourself, you have to be able to control the enemies, and you have to be able to do damage if you're going to solo play. You also, that says something. If you solo play, that probably says something about your personality. Then, you've got PvPers, player versus player, where, again, it's that competitive realm where, your split-second decisions probably will determine how better you do than the other people's split-second decisions. And then you've got PvE, where, the developers have designed specific challenges with specific requirements, whether that's attention requirements or coordination requirements, and then you have to work as a group to accomplish those requirements. So I think that this is a great conversation for that, because we get to talk about what do those different roles say about your personality. This is the MMO podcast now.
Absolutely. And I used to always play DPS because I liked the classes. They were cooler. They're like, the rogue in World of Warcraft is the stealth guy with the daggers. He looks cool. He's got cool looking gear. I was the summoner in Final Fantasy XIV, which summoned beasts. And that was actually more of a hybrid role, but I chose to do DPS with it because I thought it was the coolest class. Throughout my gaming history, summons in Final Fantasy VII were awesome. And then in Tactics, I loved summons. Summons were always just the cool thing to do in Final Fantasy, so I wanted to be a summoner. But a friend of mine who frequently played MMORPGs with me, and I played the Old Republic as well, Star Wars, and I don't remember, I was a Jedi healer and liked that role too. So this same friend, he might be a guest on our podcast one day.
Ooh.
Same friend, he just straight up told me, you need to be a tank. Because I would frequently run ahead of everyone else and draw the attention of the enemies, and because healers and DPSers have low armor and low health, they die very quickly, which puts a strain on both of the other two aspects of the party to keep me alive, to keep the party alive. And so he was just like, you love to run in first and just charge and grab everyone's attention and yell and say, I'm here, Leroy Jenkins, like, this is me. So he always told me I should be a tank. and I had some experience tanking, and I really enjoyed it. So I wish someone would have told me early in my career of gaming, so to speak, that I should be a tank, because I would have loved MMORPGs that much more.
That's my role of choice. Again, I played World of Warcraft for years, and I love tanking. That was the role that I loved the most. For me, again, with my personality type, it's all about variety of gameplay. The role of tanking requires you to focus on things that you don't always have to focus on as either a DPS or a healer. DPSers and healers tend to be like healers are hyper-focused on keeping those health bars up. DPSers are focused on, I'm doing my rotation so that I can maximize my throughput. Tanks, on the other hand, it allowed me to pay attention to more things. The only things I really had to be worried about were, am I keeping the enemy's attention in the MMO community called aggro, and am I mitigating damage in a way that's effective? Am I saving if I can save the healer even a little bit of mana, then we might be able to beat this boss in a more efficient way. I also had to pay attention to things like I had to know when mechanics were happening. So if there were other enemies that would come into the fight, mobs, ads, whatever you call them, I'd have to go run over and pick them up. Positioning was really important. I had to be the one, if the boss had to move because of some mechanic that was coming up, then I would have to move them. So the variety of gameplay was awesome. The best experience tanking I had was as a bear druid in Burning Crusade and some of the other later expansions of World of Warcraft, or middle expansions of World of Warcraft. Before they made the bear specialization its own role, bear druids were a hybrid specialization called feral, where they also focus on the cat form. So for a brief period of time in the World of Warcraft life, you got to be able to, if you were a bear druid, you would be the ideal off tank, meaning you weren't the primary person, you weren't the one who if there was a fight where there was only one tank required, you wouldn't be that guy. If there was a tank where there were multiple, or if there was a fight where multiple tanks were required, you would, pop into bear form and fight. When you weren't tanking, you were able to do more damage than all the other tanks by hopping into cat form and doing your damage rotation. I love that because, again, my personality type, I love being able to kind of just do whatever is needed at the time. If I can tank, I'm happier, but I don't mind popping out and doing some damage if it means we'll kill the boss faster. So that's what I loved that variety in gameplay that particular class and that particular MMO offered me at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife was an intuitive thinker. She still is an intuitive thinker, and she would dabble in some MMORPGs with us. My wife and I are both the types of people that with MMORPGs that would just get to max level. Mm-hmm. So there are dungeons that are not max level leading up to the end, but we would both shy away from the end game grind. We both kind of thought that it was pointless, and that when the next expansion comes out, gear that you spent weeks and months raiding is now completely obsolete, and you just get it by easy quests. But anyway, so in the bosses and the parties that we were fighting, she would always choose damage, and maybe the intuitive thinkers are damage dealers. You think maybe
intuitive thinkers are analysts, so they would probably be interested
crunching
in
those numbers and
getting the best
maximize.
Yep. Yeah. I find that personality of healers is always interesting too, because healing legitimately is the sacrificial role. It's all about taking care of. My roommate was a huge healer. He loved healing, and he got kind of this martyr complex, that he developed, because I'm always the healer and I'll always be the one to help the party, and I just want to make sure that everyone's okay and all right. But they also tend to make great guild leaders, I've noticed. Like, if your guild leader was a healer, because healers, you're focused on health bars the entire time, but you also, healers have to be aware of everything. They have to be aware, is the tank in the right place? Are the DPS screwing up? They're the ones who are going to notice first if something's going terribly, terribly wrong. So they make great guild leaders, they make great organizers. And I found that healers, they were just, everybody loves the healer because they're the person that's keeping you alive. And I think that's, again, says a lot about the kind of personalities. And it's interesting just, again, MMOs offer a variety of gameplay. So all of those roles get even more nuanced when you're talking about PvP versus PvE, and how that changes everything. So, and how two healers in a random battleground can make or break, an entire match based on how good they are at their role, and just the fact that they're there. Because most people in a battleground or in some kind of PvP environment are going to be like, I'm a damage dealer, I'm going to kill so many people. Whereas, if you got a healer in there, it's like, no, they're the ones who are like, it is quite sacrificial of them. Yeah. They are legitimately thinking about the well-being of the group, because they're the ones who are like, okay, we're going to make sure that you don't die when you rush in there like an idiot. Mm-hmm.
And they're not in the limelight, so I would say that extroverts probably aren't good healers, or at least not. If you question all of the healers, a minority will be extroverted.
But one might say that, but the extroverts are the ones who, they want to make sure that they're having a good group experience. And extroverts love multiplayer games because they get to interact with people. And if no one steps up to be the healer, the extrovert's more likely to be like, all right, fine, I'll heal just because I want this to go well.
Yeah.
But I think that some of those other personality indicators in there will come into play with as who's the person who steps up to heal. But it's always interesting. I think that it does say a lot about someone's personality. Their healer. I hated healing because I was bad at it. That's the bottom line. It's like I would have if I was good at it and I in some regard enjoyed it, I would have healed more. But I was just so bad. Like my friends always constantly mocked me. They were like, "You're so bad at it." But I always wanted to help out the group. And the tank is like the second least likely role to be chosen. Not a lot of people. It takes again a special personality to enjoy. I think tanks and healers both fall into the support role because you're not the you don't get the cool. I'm the top of the damage chart. But I was never good at being at the top of the damage chart either. So I was like, all right, I'll tank. That's the only role that I can do that I like. So, but cool. Well, what do you think? Again, talking about personality, what do you think that like any specific, like, what do you think racing games, for example, what are the kind of broad genre categories? What do they say about the people who play those? Because MMOs are for sure not the only games out there that would indicate someone's personality.
Yeah, I mean, if talking about racing games, you have different ends of that spectrum too. You have the racing simulators, and you have like Mario Kart. Arcadey, kind of fun, not story-based. Just jump in, race a couple rounds, get a gold medal, and leave, versus the racing simulators, which require more time, tinkering, and playing, and numbers, crunching. And
I found it interesting that, again, I watched the E3 coverage this year, 2017, and the fact that Xbox led with the Forza blew my mind. But again, someone on the internet pointed out to me, they were like, it's a very popular franchise, and to me that's super foreign because that's not my. But what do you think that they obviously led with it for a reason, so there's obviously a lot of people out there who play. Right,
and Xbox kind of touts itself as being the non-gamers gaming machine, so to speak. I mean, they opened the Xbox One years ago with Call of Duty, TV, Call of Duty, because those were the most popular things out there, and they thought that was what gamers wanted. Well, they still kind of have that personality, and like if you were a person who doesn't really know a whole lot about games, and you go to a game store today and ask someone, they would only mention the PS4 because it is the most popular selling thing. But Xbox was it. I mean, that was like the non-gamers machine. And so Forza developed its history and its popularity because it was the non-gamers thing. Yeah. And I guess it was easy to relate to because they had real-life cars in it. It wasn't as technical as Gran Turismo. It was easier. There was more settings to tweak to make it less simulation-ish. Like you could turn Forza into an arcade game just by going into options and changing it. So I guess because it had the broad appeal to everyone. And you were saying the Explorers were the most common, like people who probably aren't Sentinels. Sentinels. The people who would play cell phone games would be more likely to jump into like Forza because you can make it arcadey and drive your favorite car on real life tracks. So it just seems to be more appealing and just more broad spectrum.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think especially like a lot of these, in one of our episodes, I think it was our episode 1 where we talked about gaming as an art form. We talked about how like the experience of one game to another is almost in some cases so different that you almost need another name for it. And racing simulator, like simulation is the best. They're trying to go for a realistic, kind of experience, and I think a lot of personality types are drawn to that. A lot of people, I think what it says about you is that you want to experience something realistically that 99.9% of the population doesn't race cars for a living, so being able to kind of in your home experience that same adrenaline rush, I think that's appealing about that. And then furthermore, especially if you're like an analytical type, being able to go in there and then like tweak the your car settings or whatever, the type of tires you have on there,
right there,
that allows you to like, sweet, now I can not only have this experience, but I can be like make this experience even better because of the choices I make. That I think that's in a way that you can't do in real life. You can't sit there and say, I guess you can tweak your car, but you probably can't take that car on the interstate and see how fast it goes. Right. Whereas a game lets you do that.
And the same, it bleeds into like Madden, and Madden is the number one popular game. Like it's always charting the NPD charts every single month. Madden, whatever year it is, because they come out with a new one every year and they update the rosters and everything else. Madden's extraordinarily popular.
Yeah, and it's because you don't get to be a football coach, but you can be a football coach in this game. Is that how the gameplay is? I guess there's a little bit of the actual. Sure, you throw the ball, you change.
It's the simulation American football game.
Yeah,
That's all I know about it.
Yeah, so, but I mean, there's a huge appeal for that because I think there's a large portion of the population. I mean, obviously, there's a large portion of the population that's attracted to that.
Which personality type is the most popular in the world?
I don't know for sure, again, because it's something, it's probably an ES. I don't know if it's EST or ESF. Probably ESFJ, or ESFP is probably the most popular. I don't know the exact numbers for now. There's other articles. Take the quiz. The quiz tells you how popular your personality is. I think my wife's personality, INFJ, they're the least. So if you happen to be INFJ, you're actually very rare. Not very rare, but you're rarer than the others.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's funny. The Sentinels love racing games and sports games because they're extremely popular and they just jump into everything.
It doesn't take a lot of commitment either. You don't have to become. Yeah, you don't have to practice to get good at it necessarily. Right. You just have fun. Yeah, first-person shooters, I think those are, especially the realistic first-person shooters, I think are an interesting category because
Explorers.
With the Explorers, because again, that's a genre that I find tedious. But again, part of the reason I find it tedious is because there's so many guns and they all seem the same to me. But for someone who actually likes that kind of game, the appeal is, I get to, again, the choice that I made, the little slight change in the way this gun fires, the firing rate of this gun, means that I'll have higher kill count or whatever. And to them, that's, whereas I'm like, I can identify with some of the aspects of all of these things. That's what's kind of, a lot of people call this kind of technique like a cold reading thing, where you're like, oh yeah, the description you have applies to everybody. It's not quite that bad, but yeah, I can identify with all these things, but at the end of the day, I'm going to play the games that I like, and but again, I find that it's interesting. Like, it's nice to have this discussion because you kind of get to empathize with the people who are different from you.
Yeah,
and I can sit here and trash football playing games and people who play them all day, but it's much more interesting to talk about, why do they like what they like?
Yeah,
and in this case, like having this conversation, I'm like, that is interesting. I can see how that appeals to you, even if it doesn't appeal to me directly. Yeah.
What about a genre it's kind of new and it's in the pro gaming scheme? I don't even know what I'm trying to say. The pro gaming world. One is Overwatch, but two is MOBAs.
MOBAs, yeah. I figured MOBAs would come up.
What kind of personality types do you think enjoy the same hour-long routine over and over again?
Yeah. Well, MOBAs share a lot with MMOs in the sense that there's specific roles. I don't play MOBAs, so again, those of you MOBA fans out there, please correct me. But you've got laners, people who focus on being in the lanes, and then you've got junglers, people who focus on going around and killing all the that's the laners tend to be like a PvP, whereas junglers kind of are about PvE. You're trying to kill the monsters that inhabit the jungle so that your team levels up and gets gear or access a certain gear. I don't exactly know how it works, but so when people have explained to me MOBAs and what you should play a MOBA. It also comes with support roles and tank roles and stuff like that. But when my friends you should play League of Legends. No, for one, there's so many characters and you have to figure out all of that. You have to kind of more or less. The more you know about all the different characters, the better you're going to be. So if you're a noob coming in and there's 400 characters in League of Legends, I'm like, I have to do so much research just to figure out what all they do so I know how to counter them. That said, my friends have said, you should be a jungler because you get to run around the little in between areas and kill the monsters there to help the team. And I'm like, that does sound probably more fun than sitting in a lane all day. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think those are the kind of people I bet you analysts, a lot of those analytic types like those games. And I bet you still get a lot of people like diplomats, like people in my personality type, because the support, being able to have a variety of support roles and play styles. I give people a hard time about playing MOBAs, but I play Diablo 3, which has got to be equally as repetitive of a type of game. And that's what's interesting about this discussion is everybody plays, games aren't particularly, very few games out there, with the exception of maybe Breath of the Wild, which even still, I'm playing through it my second time now in Master Mode, and, I'm still like, okay, I've done this before. There's some repetitive elements to it.
Yeah.
Every single game has, they're all Skinner boxes. They're all designed to kind of get you to keep playing them based on simple gameplay mechanics. So it's all about what's that repetitive task that particularly jives with you. Even MMOs that feel like they have just tons of content. Most of your days are spent doing the same 4 or 5 daily quests to get gold, so that you can gear up for your raid that you've already done 4 times. So that's it's an interesting discussion for sure.
And then there's the open world exploration type games versus the more tighter linear progression adventure games or RPGs.
Yeah, exactly. You say RPG.
Yeah,
you say RPG.
RPG is a broad spectrum in and of itself.
Exactly. That could be Devil May Cry, which is a very linear gameplay, or it could be Skyrim, which you could play the entire game with your.
bleeding these genres together. This was my experience playing Breath of the Wild, because I don't like open world exploration. I could not get into, and I'm a Sentinel ESFJ, and I couldn't get into the more, I get overwhelmed. So I somehow managed to play Fallout 4 all the way through, and I had multiple saves, and I would load each one so I could get different endings and try and get all the trophies, because I love trophies. I don't know if you guys know that.
He loves trophies.
But even playing Breath of the Wild, I methodically went through each area. I just picked one direction and went, and I was like, I'm not moving out of this area until every side quest is done, and the tower is complete, and the world is explored, and I've done all the shrines that I can possibly discover.
It drove me crazy, because, again, we got the game at the same time, and we were playing through it more or less together, if you will, talking about our experiences, and I'd be like, I went over the Gerudo Desert, and I already unlocked this sweet, cool ability. Have you done that yet? No, I'm still in the eastern side of the map.
Yep.
Doing all the shrines there. The way we play games is fascinating, only different.
But it's so linked to your personality type and how different people would do it. Mm-hmm. And I think exploring those things and talking about them is it's fascinating. There's also the kind of gamer who jumps between games so much that they never commit to anything. Mm-hmm. And you look at their trophy list, and they have 5% of trophies on their entire list.
But that would be me.
But they have 80 times the amount of games that anyone else does, because they don't commit to a certain game. They don't finish games.
That would be me.
And they trade games in frequently. They're just I don't care. Or some people don't even care about story. They just care about the actual gameplay and the mechanics. So they just skip the story in every single game. Where I want to know all of the characters and all of the story. Yeah. I'm in it for the story.
That's totally in my personality type. It's if I don't connect with the story, I'm probably not going to like the game. I got 30 minutes into Final Fantasy Type 0. I borrowed it from a friend when I got my PS4.
I'm sorry.
It was, I didn't know what the hell was going on.
I didn't either.
And the gameplay could have been really interesting, but because I had no idea what was motivating me as in, the embodying this character, I was like, forget it. Don't want to touch it. That's true. Very much true story. But yeah, I can see how people would be like, oh no, I'm more interested in the intricacy of the mechanics, and I'll skip the story parts so I can get back to playing the game.
Yeah.
That's totally a valid way to play games. It's a great discussion to have because, in our last episode we had spoke with Shut Up Kristen, and, when we were talking about the issues that women experience in games, we kind of came to this similar conclusion where it's talking about it, check the assumptions that you have in talking to people, because you shouldn't just assume that everybody's going to like the same things you do. I think that applies to this conversation as well. Instead of sitting there being instead of your response being oh, you like Madden? That's trash. Maybe you should ask the question, why do you like it? What is appealing to you about that game? Instead of, just because you don't like a game or a genre of game, doesn't mean you have the right to sit there and make assumptions about someone based on that game. Instead, ask them, what is it about that game that you like? So that way you might find something to relate to them about. So again, this whole conversation came about because some dude was like, why do you like this game still? Essentially, more or less. And I got to explain that to him and got to learn something, not only learn something about myself, but, someone got to learn something about me and then say, oh, that's cool. I'm glad that you like that. It doesn't sound like something I want to play, but still,
that's fine.
That's cool. That sounds interesting, and it gives people more meaning to one another. And so I would encourage everybody who's listening to this podcast to interact with people in that way.
Mm-hmm. And in the broad community of gamers, you have the people who are only going to touch on the very limited time of games. They have limited budget, but they don't value gaming as important as others. But they're still gamers, and they're going to play. They're still the guys that are way back at the Xbox 360, PS3 time. That's just over 3 years ago, and they're still playing games, catching up. They're just as valid in what they're playing as well as the person who's up to date on every single thing.
Yeah,
to churn out the new releases every Tuesday. I got to play it. Here's what's coming out in August, and I got to get all of them and play them. And some people would think that person's a more valid gamer or has a louder voice, and it doesn't. It's all about removing barriers and getting to know each other and learning about personality types. And we are, as a gaming community, gaming is more prevalent in our culture now than it ever has been before, and it just helps to learn as gamers how to relate to other gamers. Just like the Myers-Briggs personality test in general was developed for business and for the employment offices and the workforce was to teach managers how to pair up their employees so that they could work better. Well, this is the same discussion that we hope that this inspires people out there to kind of think about your personality and how you might choose to talk to your friends who play games. And
maybe in fact you're sitting here jaded because you think all games are garbage now, but it might just be because you haven't found the game that jives with your personality. Exactly. So we would also encourage you to go out there and say, oh, well, first of all, what's my personality? Again, there's a ton of different, even types of personality tests out there. You don't have to take Myers-Briggs. If you as a listener are like, oh, I think this other one's one's better and more valid, let us know in the comments, please. We want to hear all about what else is out there so that we can take the test and figure out what we are. We're fascinated in this whole conversation, and by no means are we married to Myers-Briggs to thinking that it's the best. There's so many different ways of figuring out something about yourself in introspection, and then see what kind of games are out there that might jive better with your personality. Ask other people who have similar personality to you. What do you like? What do you still play? Find something out there that you can enjoy, because there's stuff out there that you can enjoy, and that's it's all about we just want to have fun. Yep. We want to have fun. We talked in previous episodes about what gaming can be for people. It can be inspiring, and we want you to find the thing that makes you tick. That inspires you, so that you go out there and create better video games for us to be inspired by as well.
Yep. And as we bring you guys to a close, I want to caveat this. This is ironic. Gamers won't necessarily conform to these types and categories that we've talked about tonight. In fact, some people are attracted to play games that exercise the aspects of their personality they don't have.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, a lot of those, everybody's way more complicated than these personality, even talking about the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
We as human beings are incredibly complicated. Individuals are more than just 4 letters, and you're going to read through these descriptions of yourself, of your personality type, I should say. A lot of it you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's me to a T. Then something you're going to be like, not quite. I'm everybody has that experience because, as an individual, you're way more than the sum of your parts. And your experiences, your upbringing, your beliefs, all of that will come into play in regards to the things you like and the things you enjoy. So yeah, and then even furthermore, like you're saying, sometimes we just, this about, you've done the introspection. You're like, yep, this is me, but because I lack this one particular quality, I want to get better at it. And an example of that for me is Overwatch. It's an incredibly competitive multiplayer first-person shooter, which tends not to be my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I have been, I will keep coming back to it, though, because not only do I enjoy the basic gameplay elements, but because it's so far out of my typical wheelhouse, I want to, try to explore more of that. Is there a first-person competitive shooter that I can enjoy? And that's one that I've been trying to really get my mind around. So far, I've been enjoying it. It's fun.
All right. Yeah, sometimes I like to play ARMS. That's the game that exercises all the aspects of my personality that are not normal.
Yep. That's true. I can agree with you on that. He does not...
Thank you, Nintendo.
He has fun. He has fun with it.
For the most complicated, hard-to-play fighting game that has ever... No.
And he hasn't even touched... By the way, listeners, he hasn't even tried to figure out how to do the motion controls yet.
Nope. I've never played the motion controls yet.
Nope. It's just the controller. Yep. It's fun. I have fun playing that game with him. He literally only keeps it for me. I don't know why. I've told him he should trade it in if he wants to, but... Yeah. He's like, no, I want to play with you.
It's fun.
All right, cool. We're both extroverts. Great. So, yeah, we'll send you guys off with some footnotes there. The 16personalities.com. Take the test. Again, let us know in the comments if you think there's better tests out there. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think. If there's something you disagree with in this podcast, let us know. If there's something you agree with, let us also know. Like us, subscribe, whatever cool things we'll have once we launch this podcast that you can do.
And even if you're on multiple platforms, if you're on Google Play, go over to iTunes and just rate us there.
Yeah, sure.
Just go across all of them and try and give us your support as much as possible. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, we're babies. We're trying to create content that we hope you guys will enjoy, and we want to create more of it. So going on from here on out, we're doing an episode a week, right?
Episode a week.
Yep, that's it. So we're gonna have launched by this point once you hear this, and we're gonna keep pushing out content to have more fun discussions that you guys can enjoy.
And we look forward to it.
So have a great day, World Wide Web, and
this is Penguin and Termite.
Penguin and Termite out.
Signing off.